Welcome to Dean Cemetery in Edinburgh, Scotland. Yes, we've gone international, and of all the cemeteries in the world that I've visited, this comes close to my favorite. And besides the beautiful monuments and gravestones in this Victorian-era cemetery are many famous figures. Now, for the purpose of this video, I'm only going to cover figures with international renown or Canadian connections. As much as I love Scottish history, and there's plenty of it here, I have to be selective for this video, but I would encourage you to look at the list of notable interments here at Dean Cemetery. So for today, we will visit Anne Nelson Brown, the wife of a Canadian father of Confederation, Joseph James Hargrave of the Hudson's Bay Company, Sir John Murray, an oceanography pioneer on the Challenger expedition, John Irving, a crewmate on the doomed Franklin expedition, Arctic explorer Robert Goodsir, and Hector MacDonald, one of Scotland's national heroes and the namesake of an iconic piece of music. Let's go. First up is Anne Nelson Brown, wife of Canadian father of Confederation George Brown, who is commemorated here on her stone. We'll talk more extensively about George Brown when we visit his resting place in Toronto Necropolis. But in brief, he founded the newspaper, the Toronto Globe, which is now the Globe and Mail, served as joint premier of the province of Canada, and was the first leader of the Liberal Party of Canada and a Canadian senator. Anne Nelson was born here in Edinburgh and met George Brown while he was here on sabbatical from his newspaper and political work. Introduced through her brother Thomas, the couple were engaged and married within weeks in 1862. Brown decided to return to Canada and his political work, bringing Anne along with him. His marriage to the well-educated and cultured Anne was noted in his gentler demeanor, who was described before as cheerless and stern. Constantly away laying down the groundwork for Canada's Confederation, Brown wrote to Anne daily, and their correspondence during the Charlottetown and Quebec conferences provides the only written account of the meetings which were not documented. Anne proved an influential advisor for the rest of Brown's political career. Sadly, George Brown was shot in 1880 by a disgruntled former Globe employee of his and passed away due to infection at the age of 61 in one of the rare political assassinations in Canadian history. Anne, who was 57 at the time, moved back to Edinburgh and never remarried, and passed away in 1906 at the age of 82. Sadly, she was interred here at Dean Cemetery alone and not alongside her husband at the Toronto Necropolis, though they are commemorated here on her stone, together, forever. Continuing on, here is the grave of Joseph James Hargrave. As we can see, chief trader of the Hudson's Bay Company, born at York Factory. York Factory was a fur trading post and settlement on the southern banks of Hudson Bay in what was then Rupert's Land, territory owned by the Hudson's Bay Company in what is now Manitoba. Hargrave was the son of James Hargrave, York Factory's chief trader, and of Letitia McTavish, both from Scotland. And they moved back there when Hargrave was 4 years old. Hargrave would return back to Rupert's Land in 1861 to work for the HBC, just as his father did, this time as a clerk. But Hargrave had connections. His uncle was William McTavish, governor of Rupert's Land and Assiniboia, and he worked on his staff as a secretary, based in the Red River Colony. In his role as clerk and secretary, Hargrave documented life on the Red River Colony and took up a position as a journalist with the Montreal Herald and highlighted events in the colony, especially the events leading up to its transfer to the new Dominion of Canada and the growing discontent of the local Métis population that led up to the Red River Rebellion led by Louis Riel in 1869. In 1871, Hargrave published his documentation on the colony titled Red River, which provides the most comprehensive account on the colony's economic, social, political, and religious environment before the Red River Rebellion. Its main takeaway asserted that the colony and its prosperity owed their entire existence to the fur trade. By 1878, Hargrave had been promoted to chief trader with HBC and served posts in Edmonton and Montreal before retiring in 1889. Hargrave remained in Canada until he returned to Edinburgh in 1894, where he passed away shortly after, at the age of 52. Hargrave's book, Red River, is still in print today, and the Hudson's Bay Company, which the Hargrave family devoted their work to, still exists as the department store Hudson's Bay, or the Bay. Up next is Sir John Murray, the pioneer in oceanography. Murray is significant because of his work during the Challenger expedition, which I'll get into. But the reason I'm including him is because he was actually born in Canada. Murray was born on March 3rd, 1841, in Cobourg, Ontario. The son of Scottish immigrants, Murray spent the first 18 years of his life in Canada before he moved to Scotland and attended the University of Edinburgh. A graduate in geology, Murray joined the crew of the Challenger expedition in 1872, a 4-year research voyage aboard HMS Challenger, a Royal Navy warship refitted with laboratories instead of cannons for scientific research. Their mission was to study the ocean, collect specimens of its flora and fauna, and learn about the depths of the ocean. The expedition was led by a fellow Scot, Charles Wyville Thomson, and they traveled over 70,000 nautical miles of open ocean, circumnavigated the Earth, and discovered over 4,000 new species. After the expedition and the passing of Thomson in 1882, Murray led the publication of over 50 volumes of the expedition's findings. Many of these findings are still used in research today. The expedition was the first of its kind to study the ocean and essentially marked the founding of the science of oceanography. Murray was knighted to the Order of the Bath in 1892 and passed away in 1914 at the age of 73. A number of aquatic species and a glacier are named in Murray's honor, including a lab at his alma mater, University of Edinburgh, and a research vessel operated by the Scottish government. Despite his achievements, as far as I was able to find out, has not been commemorated in Canada, his birth country, which I think is a shame, and I hope one day changes. As for the Challenger's legacy, though the ship herself was eventually broken up for scrap, her name was chosen by NASA for their space shuttle, Challenger, that launched in 1983, and whose mission to space was much like HMS Challenger's trailblazing mission on the ocean. Though tragically, in 1986, 73 seconds after liftoff on its 10th flight, Space Shuttle Challenger exploded, costing the crew of 7 their lives, reminding the world of the dangers and bravery required for an expedition in pursuit of scientific research. Like I mentioned previously, there is a huge number of historical figures located at this cemetery, and there was no way I was going to locate and talk about them all at length. But here's just a few of them that I found. Now this one's a bit of an odd sight for Scotland, is the Confederate battle flag. And while he's not buried here, this is the family plot belonging to Colonel Robert A. Smith of the 10th Mississippi Regiment of the Confederate States Army, who was from Edinburgh and fell in battle at the Battle of Mumfordville in Kentucky. This is the grave of William Henry Playfair, an architect who designed most of the major buildings in Edinburgh, like the New Town and the National Gallery of Scotland. Playfair also designed the National Monument of Scotland, which is notoriously left unfinished. Another architect here is William Hamilton Beattie, who designed 2 iconic buildings in Edinburgh, the Jenner's department store on Princess Street and the Balmoral Hotel. Thank you for joining me so far in our adventure of Dean Cemetery here in Edinburgh, Scotland. There is still a lot more to cover, so I'll end part 1 here. I'll put up the concluding second part next week. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate if you liked and subscribed. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.